It was a week ago today that I watched the CNBC interview with Warren Buffett held by Becky Quick. And in that interview, a lot was revealed, including the 5 stocks that Warren is buying to help correct the supply chain problem that we have with China, his holdings in Paramount Global and why he holds them and how it is a real opportunity. But as I dug deeper and deeper into the Berkshire Hathaway portfolio, I found that there is one stock in there that is so undervalued that Warren really never spoke in detail about, that I think is probably, if there's any one stock that I would say to anybody, no matter what their age and what their position is, you must own it. And it is undervalued. It is tremendously undervalued because it's misunderstood. And what I want to do is share my learnings with you today so that you can be the judge and say, must I own this stock, no matter what my financial objectives are, because it is so grossly undervalued. We'll get right into it after I share with you this is not financial advice.
Best of Us Investors presents Kerry Griegmeyer.
Whenever I need to analyze something, I usually reduce it to or compile it within an Excel spreadsheet. And what you have here is, number one, all the stocks that are held within Berkshire Hathaway's portfolio, the largest being Apple. They hold 915 million shares. They represent 5.8% of the ownership of Apple. Its current sales price is $161.41. That makes the value within Berkshire Hathaway's portfolio 147. What's that? $147 billion. It represents 43.5% of the Berkshire Hathaway portfolio. This is Apple's market cap. This is what Berkshire collects from Apple annually in dividends, $842 million. That's at a yield of 0.57%. This is over here a list of all the other companies that Berkshire Hathaway owns free and clear. Their sole ownership. I then go through and look at each individual stock. Some things leap out at me. They collect over $1 billion worth of dividends from Chevron. I'm going to give you a link in a minute to Warren Buffett's 2023 letter to shareholders. And he explains how he started buying shares of Chevron, Coca-Cola, and American Express a number of years ago, and just accumulating them and accumulating these dividends. That is to say, irrelevant of what the stock price of Chevron does, they send him $1 billion in dividends every year. Warren's job then is to reinvest those dividends in other assets. And that's what we're going to get into. And you're going to understand there is one stock here that is grossly undervalued. Okay, so you can see then some of his more recent and aggressive acquisitions is Occidental Petroleum. He has more recently bought into Activision Blizzard. I have my own ideas as to why he has done that. He is actually decreasing his holdings in BYD, and that is because of their exposure to China. And he's also decreasing his holdings in Taiwan Semiconductor, again, as he said in the interview, not because they're not a good company. On the contrary, they're a very good company, but it's because of their exposure to China. So through here, you can get a understanding, and I'm going to tell you how you can get a copy of this spreadsheet so you can, like I, study it and understand it. What I've then done is shown what the total amount of dividends Berkshire collects off of each of these holdings. And as you can see, some he gets nothing. But I come down here to a total that he makes $10 billion $226 million in dividends on an annual basis. That's coming in on a daily basis. He has 100,000 million billion dollars worth of cash. That, I figure, is invested in treasuries at somewhere about 4.5%. So he has earnings off of those of $4.8 billion. That gives him a total there of somewhere around $15 billion. Now, if you go to Seeking Alpha and go to their financials, you're going to find that their total earnings in last year, in 2022, was $302 billion. So if it didn't come from dividends, and if it didn't come from interest off of his treasuries, where did it come from? It came from these stocks over here. This is the earnings from those stocks. So he had $291 billion of earnings from these stocks over here. That again, as in the interview, he says they receive $100 million daily that they need to reallocate. 291.8 billion of that is coming from his other companies. You're beginning to see what I saw. So then I come over and I say, okay, how he has a market cap on this company, a Berkshire Hathaway, of $707 billion. What is that made up of? The stock he owns, the cash he owns, which then comes up to $459 billion, with a market cap of 707. The market is giving a value to these companies over here that he owns, a total of $248 billion. So let me just make this clear. The stocks that he owns that I've listed here amount to $459 billion. His total market cap is 707. So these other companies, the market is valuing at 248. So let's look then and say, is that fair? Okay, his earnings, as we said, from his cash and his dividends is roughly $16 billion. His earnings, if you'll go to Seeking Alpha and look at his earnings last year, were $302 billion. That means his companies over here generated $291.8 billion, or 96% of the cash that's coming into Berkshire is coming from those other companies. All right? Are you with me so far? So that gives earnings of 302, which came off of Excel spreadsheet, and a market cap of 707. All somewhere in the neighborhood of 42% of the value of his market cap is coming from the earnings. Now, I then say, okay, Berkshire Hathaway had $302 billion in earnings. Apple has $394 billion in earnings. Microsoft has $198 billion in earnings. But look what their market caps are. Each of them over $2 trillion, 3 times that of Berkshire Hathaway. Are you beginning to see what I believe is the most undervalued company in his portfolio? It's this right here. Berkshire's owned business, wholly owned businesses. And I want you to go through here. I'm going to send you this spreadsheet, and there is a link to all of these. You're going to find an overwhelming amount of them in insurance. And then I want you to go and read, and I'm going to give you a link to Warren's letter to his shareholders, and he explains float. He explains how you as a insured send him a monthly, a quarterly, an annually dividend, and then out of your dividend, he pays claims, okay? But the amount you send is far exceeds the amount that he then puts out on against claims. So that's called a float. So he has a tremendous amount of money waiting to be claimed on insurance claims. Now, I know from my experience in the insurance business, many of these dividends are never claimed, or premiums are never claimed, because the house never burns down, the crash never occurs on the car, and in many cases, it's life insurance and it's term life insurance, and the term expires before the claim is made. So he makes a tremendous amount of money that is never claimed in the float. I want you to read his letter. I want you to read that also he last year did not have a good year on an income statement because he spent 1.1% of his assets buying back shares. Now, as he explains, there's a lot of economists say that's not good for a shareholder. As Warren says, these people are economically illiterate. Because if I, the company, buy back the shares, that means you, the shareholders, your shares now become worth more because there are fewer shares out there. It's simple math. This is what Warren explains in his letter. So what I'm sharing with you is an inside look as to what this company owns, and the biggest asset no one talks about. That's the companies that the market values at $248 billion and is probably worth at least twice that much, but they don't understand it. They don't understand in here is a railroad. They don't understand in here is a maze of furniture companies, of jewelry companies, of all kinds of companies that, as he said in the interview, send him an average of $100 million per working day every day of the calendar year. So get this, understand it, and by all means, make Berkshire Hathaway a part of your portfolio. I want you to, if you will just understand this, you will have an understanding of business that few do. And I am including, obviously, those members of the stock market. Again, look at this. Earnings of $302 billion. Microsoft's $198 billion. That's a third more that Berkshire has. And yet, their market cap collectively is one third of that of Microsoft. So, study it, understand it, and by all means, if I'm missing something, if I'm I'm crazy, stupid, let me know, because I need to know, because I just bought more Berkshire Hathaway today. Okay. And I know there's A shares and there's B shares, but you go look and you're going to find under both of them that exact same market cap. They're not held separately. This is the most undervalued company that I have ever seen. Now, as I say, I want you to get this. You're going to find a link in the description that says link to Berkshire. We'll call it Berkshire spreadsheet. Get this, study it. You'll have a link within it so that you can go and see what all these companies are. I didn't even count how many there are. Let me see if I can figure. Well, no. This is an opportunity. I want you to share in the opportunity and understand this just might be the most undervalued asset on the stock market. That's what I do. That's what I enjoy doing. Sharing my knowledge, sharing my experience, and hopefully helping you see how to invest in today's stock market and take advantage of an opportunity that I've just never seen before. Okay, I'm Kerry Grinkmeyer. I'm a retired financial advisor. This is what I do for pleasure. This and my coin collection and my whiskey collection. And now I'm actually going around and looking at the art and the sculptures we have in our house and finding out what they're worth as well. I'm having a good time. I certainly hope you're having a good time. And if you want to be a part of this tribe that I've put together, you'll also find a link in the description to our Discord and our Patreon, and where we share even more words of wisdom. Talk to you again tomorrow, I'm sure.